we'll see, I might say. I mean, my dad actually was interim mayor of Lindon for a year.
We're live on the YouTube video now. I would love a water. Thank you. Sharon, did you need me to do anything
Yeah, we
to,
need to,
Thank you.
Thank you. We have leprechaun cookies tonight.
oh,
And
that's so
if
sweet.
you don't wanna eat one, you better take it home.
I think I ate a leprechaun last time.
They were good.
Yeah.
But if you wanna get one, then you better like a home. Brittany, you get one, but you want two? Yeah. Don't you know me? They are good. Yeah.
Last time was good.
Here, buddy.
On the road last time, or were you
What?
just under the weather?
Under the weather.
Oh,
God, do not get what I had. It was this head cold that went for 2 weeks, even drizzled on into 3 weeks, and even now I'm just worn out. I mean, I don't get sick. It must have been a super bug, because it got me and got me good. It was just 2-3 weeks of just laying there watching TV. I have so many episodes of TV, I don't know what to do with myself.
well, you still did your civic
Hello
duty.
there.
Logged in.
Well, yeah, I logged in, I was able to get it done, but I was starting to feel better then, but I was still coughing, and so I was like, no.
Did you have COVID?
No, I didn't have COVID, I checked negative for COVID, it was just this, from here up, you know, it's just head congestion, earache, just nasal drip, it was awful. Yeah, I stayed away from everybody, cause I don't get sick, and that thing was bad enough to where I would only go around my enemies.
Oh, there's your
You
name.
know,
Okay, well, we're gonna, who are we missing?
March
Mike.
Banks? Mike Marchbanks.
Hello, Renee.
Leprechaun? No, you may not.
You'd be here.
You wish. Are
No.
we good to start?
Thanks.
Just a second.
That's what we need, more rain.
Yeah.
Here's my house for sale.
But you're living in it here.
It's the Lindon
Have you
house.
already moved?
We're gonna start?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's all staged. It's all staged.
We'd like to welcome everyone to our Planning Commission meeting this evening. This is Planning Commission meeting for March 14th, 2023. This meeting is being recorded. We're going to begin our meeting this evening with an opening prayer from Commissioner Johnson and then a pledge of allegiance from Commissioner Showers.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful this day to be able to meet together as representatives of this great city. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to discuss the matters before us and to look at the proposals and see what best fits the needs of our city. We're grateful for the people that live here and for those who do business here. We're grateful for the wonderful city that we live in, with all the blessings that come with living here. We ask you to please bless us that we can make wise and good decisions tonight. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll begin this meeting with an audible roll call of commissioners. Sharon Call here, Mike Marchbanks, Not yet. Jared Showers,
Here.
Rob Callis.
Here.
Stephen Johnson,
Here.
Scott Thompson,
Here.
Renee Tribe.
Here.
Okay. And we've received the minutes from February 28th, 2023. Had a chance to review those. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes?
Good.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. And item number 3 on our agenda, this is a time for public comment. This would be for any items not already on the agenda for this evening. Anyone here for that purpose? Okay, and in talking with Mike earlier today, he said that our city attorney, Brian Haas, was going to do a little presentation for us at the beginning. At the end, okay, at the
Yeah, we
end.
don't want to make everybody stick around for that. That's cruel and unusual. So,
Okay, I'm sorry, I heard that wrong, but, and that may have been on the agenda, I didn't even notice, so, sorry. The first item, or item number 4 on our agenda, this is a site plan approval. This is for Doug Smith Kia in Lindon at 499 South Lindon Park Drive. And our applicant is Brandon Lundin.
Brandon Lundin. I'm Dave Smith.
Okay,
I'm part of the Doug Smith group.
okay,
Brandon Lundin is our architect. And
Okay.
He is on traffic.
okay. Would you mind coming up here in front? And then
Sure.
there should be a place for you to sign in, and then also we can hear you, those that are online can also hear your comments.
I wonder if, would it be possible to go to line item 5 and then come back to 4? Or do we need to stick to this?
Can do that.
Sorry.
Okay. We
I'm
don't
already
need any
making
kind of a
requests.
motion or anything, do we?
just to change the order, yeah, it's pretty simple.
Okay.
If he's not here by then, I'll just take over.
Okay.
I
Do I have a
move to
motion
change the order of the agenda and swap items 4 and 5.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 5 on our agenda, this is a public hearing, so I need a motion to open a public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. Okay, and this is an ordinance amendment for Waterwise Landscape and Design. Our applicant is Lindon City, and our presenting staff is Mike Florence. I'll let you go ahead.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. I gave you a summary just on the front page there of your staff report of the reasons why we're proposing this Waterwise landscape ordinance. Just as a brief summary, we receive a portion of our secondary water through Central Utah Water Conservancy District. In the past, we've received millions of dollars in grants from them for water improvements. They have given us a notice that for any future grants and for any future water incentives that our residents receive, such as smart timers or landscape improvements, that we need to have a water-wise landscape ordinance adopted. A few years ago, the other water district to the north, Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District, came through with a model water-wise landscape ordinance that many municipalities have adopted, and so I use that as kind of a template for this ordinance here. So what the ordinance would be required for any new construction for commercial, industrial, type developments. And then it would be also required for any new residential, such as single family for the front and side yards, and for any multifamily projects. And so that's kind of what it would apply to, any new construction. And we're saying in this ordinance that it would become effective April 1st, if it's passed by the city council and receives a positive recommendation from the planning commission. That date is pretty arbitrary, and so it can be moved depending on how it is passed by the city.
Mike, can I ask a question real quick? So is this new that we're including residential?
Yes,
Because, right, there hasn't been anything before in the ordinance.
That's
We've had
correct.
stuff for commercial, but this is new. Okay,
this would be new.
thank
Yep.
you.
And so kind of the highlight of the ordinance would be limiting lawn areas for these types of uses. So it would say that you can only have 35% of your front yard as lawn for single family, and then for commercial and industrial uses, that would be reduced to 20% for those uses. And so I sent you today an updated ordinance as I went through some state law requirements, and as we went through this as city staff, we made some changes to that. And so last year, the state adopted a water-wise landscape ordinance that basically, it was pretty general. It just said cities cannot prohibit someone from doing water-wise landscaping. It gave some definitions like vegetative coverage that I added to your report today, or to the ordinance. So that's why, one of the reasons it's highlighted. It defined lawn as means non-agricultural land planted in closely mowed, managed grass, sod, or turf. And so I changed up the definition that I proposed to you to the one in the state code. I also, in this ordinance, it amends specific sections of our parking lot and different zoning districts that call out grass only. So for a while now, the Planning Commission has interpreted the 20 feet of landscaping that's got to go along State Street. You've said that just needs to be plant material. However, the code actually says grass. And so we've taken that out and just said 70% of your landscaping, for example, along State Street needs to be plant material. And so, or vegetative coverage. So that's what these different districts do. It eliminates the grass requirement, like in parking lot landscaping, in the residential business overlay, in the research and business zone, in the commercial zones, and in the industrial mixed use commercial farm zone. So anywhere that it mandates grass, we took that out and made a reference to this new title 17.19, which will be the water-wise landscape ordinance. Just to get it, a couple of changes that were also the highlights that were made in the ordinance. Well, let me go through when it's applicable. So like I said, it's applicable to new industrial, commercial, institutional, and public agency. It's applicable to developer installed landscaping in new multifamily and single family residential. This wasn't required in C&D, but I added it and I wanted to get your opinion. I put for amended site plans where 50% or more landscaped areas are already being altered as part of a building additions or redevelopment of a property, or when existing commercial, industrial, institutional, or public agency properties are voluntarily re-landscaping 50% or more of existing landscaping. So if someone's already tearing out all their landscaping, my thought was, well, let's have them follow this ordinance to have water-wise landscaping. So this is more of a voluntary thing that I added here. This isn't one of the things that's mandated, but I wanted to just get your opinion on that. If someone is, for example, tearing out all their lawn, that was my thought, was let's have them bring it in to follow this new ordinance.
That was only on commercial type properties, not residential, or is that?
That was just for commercial.
Commercial or
Yes.
industrial, right?
Uh-huh.
Not, so if someone, lawn is dead in their house, right, and they're gonna tear it out, they could put lawn back in, because it's not
Good.
it's not new construction, right, from what you're saying?
Right, and they don't require site plans.
Okay.
And so they don't require amended site plan, or I specifically say here where existing commercial, industrial, institutional, or voluntarily removing it.
Okay.
So where it says lawn areas will be, in commercial areas, industrial, will be limited 20%, but they don't have to have any.
They don't have to have any.
Okay.
They just can't have more than 20 unless it's an active recreation area. So, for example, what's the building out here? It's just off Geneva Road. There's a 2-story office building. He put in a soccer field for his employees. So that's an active recreation area or active space. He could still do something like that. And so, we talk about, this G, sorry, before we move on. We added G to this section also. This mainly would be someone like for example, Rob, your lot, where it sits back off the main street a long ways. So we put in here, typical front yard residential setbacks in Lindon City are 30 feet. For the purpose of this ordinance, a front yard setback shall apply to the first 30 feet of the front yard landscaping. So we can kind of determine where that 30 feet is going to be, whether it's the land, because yours is a lane, and then it goes back to where the 30 feet is. So we'll determine where that 30 feet it starts. A couple things. Here's the landscaping. So it'll require that a landscape plan is submitted to the city for review. That's typical with any commercial or industrial. This would be something new for home builders, that they would need to submit a landscape plan to us as well. I took out botanical names, so that's pretty common that on a commercial landscape plan we'll receive both common and botanical names. I took that out because we'll get homeowners that may not know the botanical name. It's just easier to know the common name on that. So that was one change. They'll give us the total percentage of landscape area, the total percentage in landscape lawn area, the required species of plants, the plant selection. I added a section in here about the tree selection. We don't really have anything about trees in our city code for mainly commercial uses, but basically this is just common sense things, not have low growing trees under utility wires, referring to our tree planting guide for narrower areas, using a specific type of tree. Let's see. Irrigation, this gives some basic land irrigation requirements, more about drip irrigation. I took out this water sense labeled and just said smart irrigation controller. We took out the specific brand name on that. Again, that was what in that model ordinance, and we decided to take that out. So then we get down to, again, we already talked about this, but the 35% in the front yard and side yards for single family and multifamily, and then 20% for the commercial and industrial. Of that, so for example, you still have to have 70% vegetation, but that 70% is in that overall percentage area. So you'd still have, for example, in a single family home yard, you'd still have to have 70% vegetation requirement. It just limits the grass to 35% of the overall area. Same with commercial, you'd still have to have 70% of the 20% area.
Calculated, Mike, or whatever, because I'm like, there's a lot of places that you have a 3-car garage and then a RV pad on the side, and some of these front yards are very narrow. That would, if we're gonna require now 70% vegetation,
it's the overall landscape area, so you take out all
Okay,
the.
not just the front yard.
Right, you
Okay.
take out all the driveways and take out
Okay.
anything like that, so it's just the landscaped areas.
And didn't I read somewhere in there, Mike, where there's something about the developers? Developers now have to provide, like for example, in Ivory Homes, they have to provide so much sod for the front. They provide so much sod for the front, but now they're able to not do that, but still provide plants and,
Yeah, the maximum would be 35% lawn, that they
so,
would,
but they are capable of doing plants now rather than just lawn.
they are.
They don't have to do lawn.
You don't have to do lawn.
They could do some hardscaping and then some succulents or very water-wise
Yeah.
flora and fauna, right?
Yep, I meant to pull this up earlier. There's a website called localscapes.com. It gives you a lot of really good ideas about landscaping. Let me see.
Did these percentages, Mike, while you're looking that up, did they come from the model, or is
They
that
came from
yours?
Central Utah Water Conservancy
So, and-
District.
So do we have to follow those percentages?
If we want to receive any, if the city or its residents want to receive any incentives or grants, then then we would have to adopt this.
I have some heartburn about limiting on the residential, what I could do with my lawn. I mean, obviously this is for new construction, but like I'm in a situation potentially in the next few years where I would be building a new home and only having 35% as
That means
lawn.
just over a third of your yard in front could be grass.
The front and sides.
And
That's not very much.
no, I agree, like my family, we play more in the front yard than we do in the backyard.
Well, and with our house, that would be the case because we would be facing
East.
east.
And that's how we
And
face.
it would be
Right.
shaded in the evening, and we would want, our idea is to have a larger,
Yeah,
So what are the incentives right now? I mean, maybe they're not worth it.
well,
Well, I like the idea, I'm okay adjusting on the commercial, because I think we have way too much grass in a lot of the commercial areas and stuff like that. But on residential, I just don't like telling, it's just. I
we
like
don't
telling-
really, they're not giving us a choice though.
It's
Is it-
either,
is
it's
one
the
of the-
whole enchilada or nothing, I mean, is what you're saying.
Well, and
They don't, but it's not for the backyard.
Right,
There's no, they're not dictating anything on the backyard, but to your point, in the front yard, sometimes people use their front yard more for lawn and gathering because of the way it's situated from the sun.
Mike, I think it would be helpful too, just an example of, I guess, how much those grants are needed from Central Utah.
yeah, I mean, for
To discuss the North Union Canal and the Murdoch
yeah,
Canal
one of the things the
situation.
city is looking is, we lose a lot of water in North Union Canal because of the leaks in it, because of evaporation. So one thing we're working with, Central Utah Water Conservancy District on is relocating or not using North Union Canal anymore, moving the water from North Union Canal up to Murdoch Canal. And, but they've told us if we want to do that, they're going to require us to have an ordinance in place, a landscape ordinance in place.
So is this in place other places?
Yeah, there's a lot of communities that have adopted this. Provo's currently going through this same ordinance update. Their ordinance is very similar. There's quite a few Salt Lake County communities that have adopted this. There's a number of Utah County communities as well.
What about Pleasant Grove or Orem or
I haven't done an audit to see which communities have adopted
those
this.
that are closest around us? Yeah.
Talked about the rebates, so here's what Central Utah offers is, $75 rebate towards a smart controller, $1.25 per square foot if you have a park strip to flip your park strip. They'll give you, I think this one's up to $2,000 on your re-landscaping your front yard. And then $100 towards a toilet replacement.
Yeah, I can see that applying to a lot of homes in the Ivory Homes, Anderson Farms complexes, because there's a real mixture of hardscape grass. That $125 would probably motivate quite a few people to do that.
And for that project down there, the senior housing part, so that's this one here with the cottages. So they did follow that, they got an incentive for this portion of the development from Central Utah, for these front yards right here. So you'll notice, the grass is, if you add up the side and rear yard, or side and front yards, that grass is 35% of that,
I don't think
for
so.
this
If you look
development.
at that, that's more than 35%.
If you include the park strip and the side yards, that's what they're telling us, so,
Oh, they include the park strip?
yes.
I see.
So I like the look of some of this stuff. I think number one, it's more costly to do that than laying down sod. Number two, what I see is it looks really good going in, but the maintenance of that, the beds get over, the plants dry out and die, the beds get overgrown, there's weeds that grow up. I mean, it is easier to maintain grass. You just mow it.
Right.
But I'm not, again, opposed to water-wise landscaping and going that thought, but I'm not loving the 35% cap on it for the residential.
It is gonna make those older homes that have a nice front yard more attractive, I know, because people like you, I think you're right.
One of the things that I was asking Mike too, where Lindon does not have any type of residential landscaping requirement as far as the city goes. You know, if a resident was to build a new home, and even if they follow these guidelines, there's no HOA or anything like that to require that they maintain it. Do you know what I'm saying, from plants dying and
How would the city enforce, right, between knowing, okay, that this house was built in 2023 and this one was built in 2021, and so we have to go and police that they can't put more grass in this home, but they can put, it just seems like, you know,
We're only going to do the inspection,
when they put it in?
when they put it in.
Initially,
Right.
And so if someone builds a home, for instance, like me, and can't afford to put in a yard for 5 years, and so we pull weeds for 5 years, any inspection at that time?
so that's something we're, yeah.
Yeah, that would probably be a change, that this would, as part of the building permit, this would be required and would probably be involved in that inspection.
Before final, they'd have to have their yard in.
No, not with, no, we can't hold up a C of O for
But
landscaping.
some cities require that your yard be
You
in
can't anymore,
within a
according to this
specific
legislative
timeframe.
session.
A lot of cities do, but we don't.
I know. I think that's something we may look at.
it's not
Well,
allowed.
I missed that, Rob.
I think that it wouldn't hurt to have a time frame where once you get a C of O, your landscaping in your front yard has to be in by like 1 year or
Yeah,
something like that.
we can't, I don't know if we can tie it to the C of O, because the state law is pretty specific that it's for health and safety and welfare.
Yeah, well, Orem does it. They require, I don't know how they do it.
Requirement, yeah, they do,
But
Well-
they do require your yard be in a certain specific
within a
time.
year.
Maybe that, yeah, we can look into that.
Yeah.
That makes the city act like an HOA. I don't like that. You know, it's like the city putting these parameters on everybody's, and that's what's nice about buying your own lot. That's not part of a development. You can put it in when you want. You can build the size of your house that you want.
But
I
there
mean-
ought to be some standards where you maintain your yard. I don't know. I just
We
look
have
around
plenty of
and-
violations throughout the city.
I've always,
I look around
And that's
and
probably
got
how this would go too.
terrible.
Just like in our zoning, our nuisance ordinances right now, we have ordinances that you can't let your
Yeah.
weeds that grow up and you can't create a fire hazard. And we enforce that on a complaint-based, enforcement policy.
But there's nothing currently, so I know of an instance in Provo, where someone wanted a natural yard, and so they planted wildflowers, and, well, the neighbors all complained, and the city gave them a notice that they had X amount of days to clean up their yard, or, so I don't know if we're going down that route either, I mean, once we introduce these alternate landscaping, I know we're trying really hard what to decide with the corner of our lot. There's a telephone pole there, it's horrible to mow around. We want to zero-scape it, right? My wife and I, we were driving up by Heber, and there was a beautiful corner lot, and we're like, oh, we want it to look like that. Well, the next corner was probably looked like that 5 years ago, and it looked like a disaster, and we're like, oh, that's what ours will look like, because that, you know, and so I think that's one of the problems too, right? They look great, but like Jared was saying, I think they become weed fests sometimes really quickly.
You should use fabric or something.
Yeah, even with fabric though, sometimes it just,
You're right.
If you install it properly, you
mowing
should.
it, you know, sometimes is a whole lot easier to maintain than something else.
Well, the key is that you're not watering it as much, and so you don't get the weeds on such a prolific basis. I mean, that's part of it. That should help.
Well, that's,
I do see a lot of those plants dying though, that are like surrounded by rock, and they're supposed to be a little more water wise and that kind of thing, but you know,
They don't have the
drip
right
systems
drip.
Choose the
fail
right
and
ones.
things like that, and I've seen them just totally burn up.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I'm back when, that corner lot, explain the 35%. You say these comply, that corner lot, that 1424 corner lot. To me, you're saying that complies there with the 35%? Considering, where's the side yard go? All the way back to the back? So basically, the entire side yard is basically grass.
This is just what Ivory told us, that they got the incentive because for each one of these front yards. So we didn't inspect any of these. So I agree, this 1424 looks like it's got more grass, but you know, 1438 on this side
Yeah.
looks like it would definitely meet that.
Yeah, there's a lot of park strip there though, that probably
There is
just,
a lot of parks there.
Yeah.
Or you may just take it back to the front of the house.
I think the biggest problem we've got is that the city really needs the money from Central Utah. They've got a big hammer, you know, over our head for compliance.
It's like everything with the state
I
right now,
know.
the legislation just keeps be piling on more stuff over ADUs, over this,
That's
over
right.
that. And this
That's
is
right.
just another example, you know, of we're being forced into this.
Right.
So Juan said in the past year, we've received 800,000 from Central Utah Water Conservancy District. We're looking at more negotiations for capacity in the Provo River Aqueduct into the $2 to $4 million range.
The money was used for what?
For what we've done, piping projects, we've done, I don't have a list of them.
We've done the piping project up by the junior high,
Mhm.
where we put that in. Our water meters, we're getting
Yeah.
a big chunk, for that. Frankly, with the water meters, citizens aren't gonna have to pay a penny to put those water meters in. That's through those grants and some of the other funding that we had set aside. We're not gonna have to bill our citizens a penny for it. And so it does come into play. That 800 grand would not be available without this, unfortunately.
Well, and that north, you know, converting the North Union Canal to the Murdoch Canal would be a really expensive project.
Also looking at a major piping program on the hollow ditch down on the west side. We're trying to pipe a good portion of that too, that we're looking at getting quite a bit of grant money for that as well. And that would solve so many problems with flooding issues that we've had when we have these big storms come through. So that's what we're thinking of. That's why Juan is really interested in this.
We haven't accounted for those things in our budget?
It's there, but we have been able to get these grants, and so those are calculated in the budget. And if we, you know, we just have to do an analysis. And I don't know that budget answer, Renee.
Yeah. I'm just curious.
But in this situation, city parks are exempt from all this stuff, so we can, if we can't have grass anywhere, we can still put it in the city parks, or they're gonna come back to us later on and say, oh, you need to trim your size of your city parks down.
Not in this one, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where this may conflict with an HOA, and we don't have a lot of HOAs in Lindon, but you know, an HOA went in 10 years ago, but there's still some lots that haven't been built out. And this guideline may conflict with what the HOA guidelines are, what prevails there.
in this case, this is only for new construction, those HOAs are established, so the HOA would control.
Even though there's lots in that HOA that do not have homes on them, and there would be a new home built on that lot.
That's a good question. I need to look at that because generally we look at, there's another code section that says once a subdivision, that was passed 2 years ago, once a subdivision is approved, we can't go in and mess things up with that subdivision. So I think that HOA would prevail, but that's a good question. I do need to look at that.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right, that just because someone is building a home in an HOA, they don't have to
Yeah, there's a
comply where
specific
someone
code.
builds a lot, you know, a separate lot in a, you know, on a,
Pass, right?
where there's just an empty lot, that they do have to.
So
I mean,
I
that
think
doesn't
that the
seem-
HOAs and those existing approved subdivisions would not count as new construction under this because of that
Wow.
other legislative act. I can't remember the code section, but.
Well, on the other hand, if that HOA has a format for their landscaping, and one person is different than that, it's gonna look unusual.
It's interesting, both of my daughters have, you know, are in HOA developments in North Lehigh and Traverse Mountain. And both of them, you know, flipped their park strip, you know, this last year. And both of them said, is that gonna cause problems with the HOA? And they both said, they have to let us do it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And they both did.
So let's say we say yes to this. And so that means now we can get grants from them and our residents can get incentives. And how does that get communicated to them? And is it worth it? Are our citizens going to say, you know what? That's not that worth it to us and we don't like being dictated to on our yards.
Well, I don't think anybody likes to be dictated to.
Right.
But
Rolling over to all this,
Well,
the hammers,
because,
the hammers.
because we're receiving millions of dollars in grants that otherwise we wouldn't be able to afford
well,
to do a lot of the work we're doing.
The government understands that. Oh, we'll get them to do this.
It's the
because
carrot, it's the
we'll
carrot
pay
every
this
time.
head.
Yeah, I totally understand that, but you know, you've got a water district that is powerful and you know, the city is a population of 12,000 residents and there's things through grants that we need to
Well,
be able to
should we not
fulfill.
go to that district? Should we stay where we're at?
I think you have to go to that district to get some of your secondary water. Otherwise, you won't be able to fill your secondary water basins.
Pass, haven't we?
What's that?
Haven't we been
haven't
able to in the
passed.
past? Fill our secondary water
Yeah, through what water we receive from them.
from them?
So is this new for them?
What's that?
Yeah, this requirement is new. This is a new thing that they're
Yes.
pushing in.
Maybe we don't need their water this year. There's plenty
Well,
on the
I
mountain.
think we need to get past, I think we need to get past, hey, we're not gonna use them, or what, you know, that's not
I think
realistic. We
them.
have to look at the ordinance that's in front of us, and is there changes that need to be made to it? You know, are there things that you want, tweaks that you need to,
And they did say they would work with us as much as they can on language.
So
That's the
basically
ratios.
percentages, are they willing to let us,
Now,
adjust some percentages?
That percentage, but Mike, this is just a thought, I probably should have mentioned this before. I mean, your question raised it in my mind. We may be able to go back to them and talk about, hey, let us designate what constitutes front yard versus backyard. You know, because in certain circumstances, it makes more sense to have more grass in the front yard. Maybe we can tweak that language that only in the landscaping ordinance, we can work with property owners to designate what constitutes front yard versus backyard.
in the residential?
Because the water district doesn't care where the 35% is, as long as they're saving the water. Now, I don't know if that will work. I'm just
That's
throwing
interesting,
some
because
stuff out. But those are the types of things they said they would be willing to look and work with us.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, like my property exactly, I have a 30-foot setback in my backyard, and all my property's in the front yard.
Right.
So if I came along and said, well, I will do water-wise in my entire backyard,
And I'm
Why
just
is that
throwing
not-
this at Mike
that
and
should
Mary,
comply.
and And there may be some, some setback things that conflict with this idea, maybe it won't work, but it's certainly worth looking at.
It's worth
Yeah,
asking.
I think it is. I like going down that road a little bit. Flag lots, sometimes depending on how that's set up, some of those, the placement of the home on some of those lots might dictate that the landscaping needs to be shifted around or whatever. It might be awkward to have the 35% applied to the front yard of those
Yeah.
flag lot homes too. So to be able to have some flexibility, I think, because it doesn't matter to them where that grass really is located.
Right. So, Mike, I apologize for just throwing that
No,
out.
I think that's why we're reviewing this ordinance. I think, whatever you want to do, if you want to continue to this and let the city staff evaluate that, or make that as a motion, or as a condition of approval and your recommendation to the council
Well,
that
just
we
a thought, for
study
example,
that.
somebody might have half their backyard in a garden, a vegetable garden. And so they want more grass in the front because they don't have, maybe it ought to be considered the total yard rather than just front yard.
Yeah, I know when we discussed this with the city council, whether to move forward on an ordinance, they were hesitant about touching the backyards, a little more, looking at the front yards.
Right, well, I can see we're not, but just giving them the option to say 30 feet of your backyard.
Yeah,
In lieu of front yard, because 30 feet, the width of your property could be designated as water-wise in the backyard to offset additional grass in the front yard.
Percentage, right? We're dealing with percentages, not feet,
Well,
right?
so
they're saying 30 feet. The first, this landscape only applies to 30 feet. Like, for example, my property's deep. If I was a new build, only the 30 feet from the street, the first 30 feet would have to be that, and then I could do grass.
Well, we're saying we'll designate that 30 feet, because if you've got a large deep lot like Rob, you're not gonna do the first 30 feet of the lot. Does that make sense?
Maybe I'm not fine, because you indicate the first 30 feet in the ordinance is what's considered their front yard. So if I have
Yeah, so
60 feet of front yard.
Maybe I need to rewrite that a little
Your
bit,
house,
but
for
My house is
example.
example. If you have 60 feet of front yard, but you're saying this ordinance says the first 30 feet has to be water-wise.
I said the first 30 feet of landscaping. And so that was kind of a general way to say, we're not measuring that from the front of the lot necessarily because of these deep lots. It's the first 30 feet of landscaping that we'll identify.
So if you come in 10, then start landscaping, you go 30, then you can, like in Scott's case, then you can have 20 more of unlandscaped, and you're just counting that 30 feet in the middle?
We're just counting the 30 feet where he starts to landscape. So,
From the sidewalk?
if your home sits back 300 feet, on a deep residential lot, then where you start to landscape, if it's a flag lot, then it'd be that front area of the home, not the first 30 feet out on the street. And I can, if that needs some clarification, I can work on that, but.
It'd be good to maybe have some, maybe examples and pictures or something, at least, so we
Well,
can
we're gonna-
visually see it.
So we're gonna put together a landscape handbook, so with this, so it's clear what we mean, how we're interpreting things. Like we have the accessory apartment handbook, so people understand that better with pictures, and so we'll do the same thing.
Well, I think it's great that this could be more restrictive. They could have came along and said, anytime there's a building permit on that property, you have to comply to everything, and they're not. It's just the new build. So when we say the residents of the city, these are new residents, majority of them are new residents coming in. There are gonna be some longtime owners of properties that are now getting around to building their house that, it could affect them, but.
Well, again, when you're talking about 2/10 of an acre or even a little bit smaller in some of the Anderson development, this is very feasible and it looks really nice.
Looks
but
good, right,
You're building on a half-acre lot,
yeah.
Non-grass.
yeah, it's a lot of non-grass.
Right.
I think we're gonna have to get beyond the fact, though, that
Yeah,
we're not gonna have to comply in some way, though.
right.
Because having Central Utah Water be very much a part of our city, I think that's a given, that we have to have that. We can't do many of the things that have to be done with the city without their help. And so we're gonna have to comply in some ways. They may, take suggestions and tweak it
Yeah.
in some small ways, but basically, I mean, I remember when Van Broderick was talking at city council, and he's over all the waters and all that stuff for the city, and he said, in the last 20 years, we've had like 3 or 4 years where we've had adequate, rainfall and moisture. All those other years have been very, very dry years, and so I think the message they're giving is we've got to do something different.
And I don't have a problem with that, with trying to be more conservation
Yeah,
minded with water. I have no problem with that at all.
The only thing that you could possibly see on the horizon is, now that we do have meters, some year down the road, they're gonna establish a certain amount that's tier 1 or something like that. And are they gonna be basing those standards on, they should only have 35% grass, therefore
Yes.
they should only get X amount of water, so,
I
I mean, I could see them
I
in the
don't-
future, they could take that into consideration in determining what your base rate for irrigation water is.
I don't think we can go there at this point.
I know we
though.
can't, but I mean, I'm just saying, all this comes in, you gotta look at
Well,
the
I
future
mean,
as well.
you're right. I mean, 20 years ago, we never would have thought we'd had meters. And
Yeah,
then
exactly.
Then we're mandated by the state to have meters.
Yeah.
And so you never, you can't foresee what the changes are.
Yeah, and
So-
at this point, we don't even know how the meters are gonna be used, other than they're there.
But if water had stayed same way as it used to be, then a lot of these things wouldn't have come about.
Yeah.
Yep. My biggest concern with the whole thing is that this is, at least to me, there's 6 of us on this commission. There's 12,000 Lindon residents. This is a public hearing. We have no other Lindon residents here I mean, if I wouldn't have been here, I wouldn't have known, and I know it's noticed and everything, but to me, this is a big issue. This is a huge issue. We've had commissions study the general plan. We've had people, even if it was just an outreach to the citizens to educate them why this has to be, I don't know, I just feel better about going through a process with the citizens and education before, because if this gets passed, and, I go back 10 years before I was on the planning commission, I'd be furious, right? Would I vote someone out of office because of this or whatever without the education? And so I don't know how much of that's our responsibility, but to say, what is your input? And educate them the same thing. I mean, yeah, I wish this wasn't here but to get this money, we have to do this. What ideas does the citizenry have to maybe make it a little bit more palatable for them? Or like the ideas of, I would have never thought about the front yard or backyard. Because it's not my situation, but somebody else would, or what about the garden, or what about this?
Well, I think the problem that's gonna be difficult to get people, like no one's sitting in the audience here talking about it, is because even if they read the ordinance, say 90% of the population in Lindon would go, that doesn't apply to me. Because my house is already here and it
Not
doesn't
new
matter.
construction.
And so they don't care. They're not gonna show up here to rally around maybe some future issue
Development.
they perceive that doesn't affect them.
Yeah, but I think
don't-
I would.
they
Most
won't-
of them would perceive that if they're doing something with new residents, it could eventually come, like
Affect
you said,
them
on the
too.
meters or different things.
Could be a long-term creep that comes
Yes.
into your life, and that's the part where we want your citizens to know about that.
Yeah, and so, that's just my my personal opinion, I think we've made some good suggestions, but I would also love to have some type of public forum where at least could be addressed and stuff. We could see what they say before we just push
So
something
some
from down.
education of
Some
the public.
education.
I think it would be great if you said, we can continue this. If we go back and rewrite something to take into account the front yard, rear yard, do some research on that, and then we come back, and then we give the public a second opportunity for a public hearing, then we can say we had 2 public hearings on this issue.
Right, but maybe in between something,
Maybe
on the
between-
website saying that this is this is a big issue.
This is, put it on the website, this is what's gonna be on the agenda, you know.
Not just in an agenda somewhere, but maybe a little more something on the Facebook page or something that says,
Could we invite Central Utah Water leadership to come here so we could ask them some questions?
Could, I mean,
I know we're being a little
I-
difficult, but we're all
I'm just
feeling a
won-
little
I'm just won-
pinched.
I'm just wondering, is this, you know, would it be better to have them come to a city council meeting so they don't have to come twice? Because I'd hate to have them come
Either way.
here and then the council wants them now to appear before the city council meeting.
Would you suggest that maybe both bodies be a part of that discussion? I mean, because I think there's enough hesitancy with this group to just go ahead and pass something and send it on to city council.
Yeah, I guess Brian and I have provided you a lot of information. Everything that we have received from Central Utah, we've provided to you. And just the conference calls I've had from them, I'm not sure you're gonna receive any different information.
That was my thought.
Well, it doesn't matter. We need to feel like we're doing our due diligence with them, and they need to answer to us a little bit. I don't remember voting for anybody on that Central Utah Water District. I mean, these are utilities, but they start to have so much control.
That's the point that the council made exactly. What you're expressing is not surprising at all. It's reasonable and it's completely understandable. And we know as staff, we're asking a hard thing because this is an intrusion on a lot of stuff that's been very personal. But as we move forward, you know, Adam does a great job. Every year he does a report on the city that's on the webpage. If you go and look at the grants that staff has been able to secure, they are a big part of the budget that we do. And this would really slam the door shut on some of those. And Central Utah comes in and says, look, we're not asking for you to go back and retrofit all of your city.
Right.
That's what the legislature does with meters. We're asking you to just go forward and put in these water-wise restrictions going forward because we have a population that's going to, I don't know if it's still doubling, but in 15 to 20 years, we're going to have 1 million more people on the Wasatch Front. And we just have to address these issues now. That's the point that they make. And that's a reasonable point too. I mean, that's a reality that we have to look at. So Renee, you make a really good point. You have not voted for a single member of that board. They're all appointed and every county does get representation. Salt Lake County has 5, Utah County has 3. But you're right, they are not elected officials. So.
But even if they were, that doesn't necessarily mean that they would see things in a different way.
Yeah.
No, but they would be much more open to hearing from their constituents.
Yeah. And
Of which we are.
right.
Taking into account the hammer or the carrot that's being waved over our head or in front of us, I mean, I think this is a matter of, this is gonna happen down the road, no matter what, but I think we have a really important job to make sure that our public is there. And if we can clear up any of that language regarding front yards, the 30 feet, can it be done in the backyard, can it be overall? I think that would
Show some flexibility.
go a long way for them if they're willing to change that language and still accomplish the same water requirements. I think that would go a long way to say we at least tried and we at least had another hearing, gave people more chance to talk to it, but like I say, I don't know whether that hearing could be a joint or to avoid this dragging on forever. I know you probably have deadlines. Do you have deadlines?
We do have some, you know, we've got some construction projects we're hoping to get $500,000 on accessing the aqueduct for our secondary irrigation system so that we don't have such an expense in maintaining the North Union. And that is coming up here fairly soon. I think we could bump it out one more time, but we probably couldn't bump it out 2 or 3 more times.
Right.
Well, I really do think it would be helpful to have somebody come. I know you guys have tried to describe it, but to have somebody come from the conservancy to articulate, to educate, to explain, maybe to answer some questions, and I think that puts a lot of it on their shoulders rather than the staff's shoulders to try to get across the point that this is needed.
They need to sell it to us. They've sold it to you, but we have a different role than you. They need to sell it to us.
I think it's like Mike said, though, and I agree, but what would they tell us any different than
It
what-
doesn't matter. They need to come and defend their position.
I think we're not looking for an argument, we're looking for some education and some clarification and things like that, and they have statistics at their fingertips that maybe they haven't shared with staff that, or maybe create more of a sense of urgency in the minds of our citizens. I think it could be a fascinating,
And I guess
interesting,
where does this
informative
board
night.
get their millions of dollars?
What's that?
Where does the district
From the
get their
county?
millions of dollars?
They get,
State and federal,
and county,
and county.
and county.
So,
So they meet on a monthly basis, right? The Central Utah Water Board?
I believe so.
And so I guess then, it's just for me to figure out the structure, right? I mean, I
Right.
guess they're appointed, so the legislature
Or they're sort of,
earmarks money that appoints people to
they're sort of
oversee it.
quasi-government or.
Yeah.
Yeah, so where's their
or private
pressure
water
coming from?
company or-
But
Part of their pressure too is, I hope I'm saying this correctly, so part of that Colorado River Basin is the way they were telling us, that Utah, who else is that, Nevada, California, they're all part of. Utah is the only state that hasn't done anything like this yet, that's put water-wise requirements on their citizens and on their businesses. And so they're receiving pressure. Central Utah is receiving pressure from these other states as well to implement something to conserve water, because right now we don't do anything to conserve water as far as legislation. And so that's something they were telling us, is they're getting pressure from the other states to do things as well.
go ahead.
I was just reading the ordinance too, and maybe I missed part of this, in doing, but where is it stated in our general plan that the goal of Lindon City's general plan is to encourage water conservation? It seems like we're really changing, when I first got on the council, it was, no, you have to put grass in, you have to, and so, and I know you were going through that update, but this seems to, it's a huge shift. And
don't
maybe
think
we all need to recover from the whiplash that we've had as this shift happens, with all this.
I may not have included the statement in your staff report, but I did up here in the whereases, but
Yeah, in the whereas, I'm like, both of those
Whereas does
state
talk-
that,
it
and I'm
does-
just, I guess,
the
I
ci- the
haven't
general
seen,
plan does encourage water conservation. It has a statement about that.
right,
Very much a true statement.
So if we were going to have a representative from Central Utah come to provide some education and some question and answer type situation, I would hate for them to come twice. I think my suggestion would be that would be a joint city council planning commission session or meeting or something, just so that, because city council's gonna have a lot of the same questions we do. They're gonna have a lot of the same reservations that this commission does.
But are they gonna have, when they're gonna send one representative, and is that representative really gonna have any authority to change anything? Or is he
Probably.
just gonna sit here and go,
He's
this is
probably
it,
not gonna
sorry?
have the authority to change things. He would.
We need to
provide-
prep them, and
provide
that we
the
have a lot of
education,
questions.
though.
Yeah.
They need to
Feedback
co-
from this meeting should be passed on to that
Well, sure,
individual
that
prepare
could
to address
happen.
some of those same concerns.
Yeah, that could happen, but I think it would be more of a purpose of a question and answer and an education type thing.
Well, I feel that there's, I feel for Mike and
I do
Mike's
too.
like-
He probably walked in here thinking this was gonna, it's mandated, it's gonna happen automatically,
I don't think so.
but it's,
They've told us they just won't change, and so,
I wonder why it doesn't sound like there's any flexibility.
It really doesn't, other than maybe some clarifying language on the
And
yards.
again, we can invite them, and we certainly will, but we can't force them to send a representative.
Right, exactly.
They may give us the same message that, hey, these are things that are not gonna change. If you want these grants, this is what you need to do.
And I guess that's my question with this. In writing this ordinance, right, have we pushed it as far as we think we can push it? Or have we taken?
I really think we have. Adam in particular, and Mike have really gone back and forth with these representatives and have been pretty blunt. You know, saying, our council, our commission,
Yeah.
they are not gonna like this at all. And we really
Versus
have
taking,
have
you know,
pushed
kind
on
of
that.
an example somewhere and trying to fit it. Have we really gone through each line and said, okay, have we made it,
No, every line
pushed
isn't,
to the line, you know, or maybe a little bit over the line and said, okay, would you accept this? You know,
every
have we
line is
tried to-
not from Jordan Valley. If you look at your staff report,
They pulled some of that from other cities.
yeah,
Right, but I guess as I'm saying, is we're pulling this, are we, as our mindset, we're gonna push this as far as we can towards our residents' mindset, and, you know, if we're gonna do an ordinance, are we gonna try to be as aggressive on our ordinance as possible?
No, we did that, I pulled out many things that, you know, at least from that model ordinance, like they had a PSI requirement for the pressure regulator, and, you know, I pulled that stuff out from the model ordinance. The things, if you look at this letter that I put in your staff report, these are the things that they want to see. The applicability here, that it's the new construction for residential and commercial and industrial. It's the front and side yards for residential. Those, you know, the 8 feet, that's already a state requirement. You can't require grass in an area that's less than 8 feet. That's already written in state law. So that's in the ordinance. The 35 and 20% requirements, these are the landscaping requirements they want. Like the things about trees in there, I added that because I felt we needed that, because this ordinance is about landscape and design. So there was things I put in there that I felt like people needed direction on as we as we review landscape plans. So these are the requirements here from Central Utah.
And none of us seem to have any heartburn over the commercial or industrial aspects of this, just the residential.
We're already doing that.
Right, and we're all grateful that we no longer have to require commercial businesses to put in grass when they don't have irrigation water, when they're using culinary water to water the grass that we're forcing them to have, so.
Okay, I think that if we're gonna continue this, we need to give some feedback to Mike on exactly where we want him to go with it.
Well,
You know, 'cause
Well,
they
can I
worked
read what I
pretty hard
have
on-
that I can, you know, that we would look at the front and side yard requirement, or front
Right.
yard requirements. We'll ask someone from Central Utah to attend, and then put something on the website or Facebook about, you know, the draft ordinance.
Right.
Okay,
so that people could go. And honestly, there's so much here, and with the stuff you put, I would like time for me just to digest it. You know, by the time the staff report came out with everything I had going on, I didn't have time to digest your letter and the requirements and try to do any cross-checking myself, and that would be probably helpful just to, so maybe I understand better what the requirements are and how that coincides with what's written in the ordinance, and, because I haven't been able to do that at all.
Let's make a motion to continue it.
and then, but I know that this was scheduled to be on city council
That's
agenda.
fine.
That could be
We can
taken
push it
out.
another
Don't we
meeting.
have a couple joint meetings coming up, and one of them's a training meeting, where it's just training and then more of a social, can we?
I'm
Invite them
afraid
to
this
that.
would take too long. I think we're
Okay.
looking at, you know, 15-minute training or something, and
Okay, because I know we have 2 joint meetings coming with the council.
focus just on general plan, and then I think the other one is just a quick training. And
Okay.
I mean, it's just some of the direction though in this ordinance, you know, these are the requirements from central Utah about the 35, the 8 feet. Like I added things about trees in there. I added some things about the drip irrigation. You know, because if you're going to use water-wise landscaping, you're going to use drip irrigation. There's just more, there's some common sense things in the ordinance. Are you good with those
Yeah,
things?
those make sense. Those all make sense, that you're gonna, if you're gonna have a gravelled area like I'm planning, gravelled area with plants in them, you're gonna drip that, you're not gonna spray it. I mean, that's just common sense, I would hope.
Yeah.
Well, but as I read this, I mean, you could have 500 feet of gravel mulch and 2 plants. And
No,
that-
you gotta have 70% plant coverage.
Of what? Yeah, but it defines mulch as plant.
No.
No.
Yeah,
It
it
defined in
does.
there that plant means a mature plant, you put a plant in, when it's mature, it's gonna be
Yeah, you read.
this big, and it's gonna cover X amount of space, I think is what is what I
Mulch-
saw, vegetative cover.
Yeah,
where it
mulch
says-
means any material such as rock, bark, wood chips, or other material left loose and applied to the soil. And then vegetation coverage is,
Where's that at? Which section?
it's in the definitions at the very, under all the whereases.
The first part.
Yeah, it says of plant group of at full maturity is vegetative coverage. So you know, when you get a new home, it's not gonna look like it's full. When they
Okay,
get,
landscaping means any combination of living plants such as trees, shrubs, vines, ground covers, annuals, perennials, ornamental grass, or seeding, natural features such as rock, stone, or bark chips, and structural features including. So if I did all gravel, that's landscaping.
Well, we're considering mulch and gravel as part of your landscaping, so it can be your mulch around your plants.
But
where does it say
but what's the re-
70, where does it say
Yeah,
has
se-
70% vegetative cover?
Yeah,
Is that does say somewhere in there that does?
it says it, it's down at the bottom.
Vegetative coverage.
So this is under new single family. It says non-lawn planting areas shall include a minimum of 70% water efficient vegetative coverage.
Okay.
In the commercial industrial, same thing, minimum 70% water efficient vegetative coverage.
Okay.
Vegetative coverage does
Has a
not
different-
necessarily mean a plant. It means
No,
Rocks.
no.
No, I think
Vegetative
you
coverage
have
has a different
landscaping's one
definition
definition and vegetative cover is another. And this is saying your landscaping must include, your
70%.
landscaping, which is the whole area and what you're doing, your plan, must include 70% of vegetative coverage
And we're
based
saying-
on a mature plant.
And we're saying that in a residential area?
Yes.
So if you have 1,000 square feet of gravel, you're saying that 700 feet of that has to be covered by shrubs.
Or is a tree vegetative cover?
Tree is not.
Tree is not, so you have to put something, so,
The vegetative
So if you
coverage,
want-
there's
yeah.
a definition of it right here.
so if you have a big driveway or, like I said, that's the
You
part I
can,
can't wrap
you
my
can
head around.
change, that's the way we've done it for commercial for quite a while. If you think that needs to be changed for residential, where it's only 50% coverage of plants, you know, that's,
Well,
so-
or is there planting, is there a way to, well, I don't know. I just,
I'm gonna send you a couple websites. This is a good one to look at. It's called localscapes.com. You know, for example, they'll show you, what a single-family home would look like. You know, you've got your central open space there in the front. It shows you your plant coverage. So,
That's a lot of shrub trimming and weeding every year.
But does your
Thousands of dollars of
Yeah, it
expense
is.
too.
That's a lot.
Does your 35% grass is that included in your vegetative coverage?
it is.
So if you have 35% grass, the grass, the other areas don't have to be covered in it's not saying 70% of the gravel has to be vegetative coverage.
right,
It's just saying 70% of the overall, including the grass.
Right.
So that helps a little bit.
Well, let's go ahead and I think Mike knows, what we'd like him to do. And let's go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we can go ahead and make a motion. I'm assuming that neither one of you that are here have public input on this ordinance? Okay.
I can make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay,
I'll second the motion.
okay, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous.
One more question. So if I was building a new house, I could just leave it dirt and I wouldn't have to do anything?
No, you'd have to have 70%
70% shrubs or
vegetative
grass.
coverage.
It has to
Within
be,
what time limit?
We don't,
Have a
That's not
requirement
stipulated.
yet for
Well,
that.
how about time my grandkids graduate from college?
But, right,
Is that what we're saying?
well, that's the
Right
question.
now, you could do it.
Yeah, we don't have a residential requirement there.
okay. We did close the public hearing, so now do
I
you
make
want
a
to make a
motion
motion to
close the
continue?
public hearing.
We
Well,
did
we
that
already
already.
did
Oh, we
that.
did that, didn't we?
So if you want to
We need a motion to
continue it,
continue
then
it.
we need a motion to continue it.
I'll make a motion to continue ordinance number 2023-0-1 to allow city staff to address the concerns we have.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second to
I second
continue?
that.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. And now we're going to go back to item number 4 on our agenda. This is a site plan approval with Doug Smith, Key and Lindon, 499 South Linden Park Drive. And it's Mike, did you say Mike Smith? Or Dave Smith and Brian Lundin that are here. And if you'd like to come up to the front, sign your names, and then also so that public that are online can hear you. Okay, and Mary Barnes is our,
We, just to note, we did
Staff.
get an updated
Staff report.
staff report on this item, so I don't know what y'all are looking at, but I don't know if you saw that from
no, we
Mike,
did, but I understand from Mary there's additional changes.
Yes, yeah, well,
from the one that Mike sent out later in the afternoon.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, we'll try to pay
We're gonna
attention up
watch
here
on
then.
the screen then.
yeah, please.
Yep.
Okay, so, as Sharon said, the applicant for Doug Smith Kia here in Lindon is Brendan Lundin. We have Dave Smith here as well. We did send out that updated staff report earlier this afternoon, just for the record. On Friday, when I was putting together this staff report, we didn't have all the needed information quite yet. We ended up being able to get that information in the interim. We sent out that updated staff report this afternoon, and then just a few, like 20 minutes or so before the start of this meeting, another change came through in the landscaping, which we will talk about a little bit later. So I'm going to be presenting from the updated staff report where everything that I've changed is highlighted in red. So this new car dealership will be located at approximately 499 South Linden Park Drive, which is just north of the Home Depot that's right here. With this application, the applicant is proposing to construct a new car dealership. I'll pull up the site plan. That will have service bays, showroom, display space, and a car wash. Here's that car wash. These express service bays. There's service bays in the back, and I can actually show the floor plan here. There it is. In this phase, in this first phase, we'll come back to the site plan. In this phase, only about 70% of the site will be improved and finished. So you can see in this second phase, this is like I believe until it is improved and finished, it's going to be gravel. Eventually, it's going to be a car park or a parking lot. So the applicant will be improving that 30%, the rest of the lot in this second phase at a later date. So Lindon City did set up an Lindon RDA number 3 project on this lot a few years ago. As part of this project, as a part of a incentive for economic growth, they did construct, oh, I'm sorry, they didn't, they installed and maintained the streetlights, the sidewalk, and the existing landscaping along the street here. Like I said, as an incentive. And with this project, the maintenance duties will be passed to the applicant for that landscaping. Up until this point, Lindon Parks and Rec people have been going out and maintaining that area. So it's going to be pushed onto the applicant. So going into the site development standards, the parking standards are based on the square footage of the building and the use of the building. According to our parking code, 1 parking space is required per every 250 square feet of office or showroom, plus 1 per employee. According to the applicant, Kia will have around 60 employees at any given time. So that comes out to about 111 required parking spaces on the site. There are 310 parking spaces on the site. So they do meet that requirement. However,
Is the parking spaces, the display parking spaces considered in that?
no,
That's in
so
addition to.
yeah, I understand your question. Let me check really quick. Okay, yeah. So 111 required parking spaces are for customers and employees,
Okay.
right? And then the remaining 199 are display spaces. Of course, that'll probably move around a little with customers. I mean, sometimes they'll buy online, things like that, I'm sure. And then with this addition of the parking on the side at some point, there'll be even more display spaces. But for this building, only 111 spaces are required for customer and employee parking, if that makes sense.
With the, what's the used car place down here?
Lowbook?
Lowbook Sales, they were using all of their parking stalls, and their employees had to park on the street.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there were some changes
That's
that
not
were
good.
made on that
Before
to
they-
enforce it, though.
They added on.
But this has got plenty for both, right?
Yeah, this should have plenty for both. So there is a requirement in the vehicle sales lot section in the commercial code that the stalls must be clearly designated as a customer versus an employee stall with upright pole signs, and we don't see that on this plan, on this updated plan, so that will be a future comment that we'll send.
Part of the motion, the updated motion.
Yeah. So we added that as a condition of approval as well. And then I'll just go through these other parking and display area requirements. So all the parking spots do meet dimension requirements, and vehicles for sale, obviously, there's more than plenty. There should be more than plenty parking on the lot, especially with that second phase, so that they will only be displayed on the lot. It will be properly surfaced. No vehicles are going to be parked on required landscaping, and the parking areas do meet that minimum 27-foot setback. Onto traffic circulation. There are 2 main accesses to the property, here on 400 South and then here on Lindon Park Drive. This is going to be the main access, of course. This is where people will come in from I-15, most likely. There's a future drive approach at some point with this second phase. So the way they set up this site is so cars can come in and come into this express drive area, come out, go through a car wash, however, whatever needs to be done, and then the cars will, loop around and come back out. So it's a free-flowing, well-flowing site, according to our engineers, which is great. And now for the landscaping, which everyone's been waiting for. Yeah. Okay, so first, the interior parking landscaping standards. So on this site, based on the amount of required parking spaces, which was 111, we require 4,440, at least 4,440 square feet of parking landscaping. As you can see, they clearly meet this. I think just this island, this landscaping island is like 7,000 square feet, I think. So they do meet it. And then the coverage requirements for all the parking landscaping have been met. there's a xeriscape versus canopy coverage requirement that they're meeting. And then 11 trees are required in parking landscaping, and they have provided 31 trees. Second, the actual site and zone landscaping standards. So the updated plan, I'll come back to the site plan for this. This updated plan shows 19% with this development, this first phase, 19% of the entire lot will be landscaped. In the regional commercial code, it requires 25%. So the code also states that phase developments are required to install landscaping for each respective phase at the time of development. So with that, we decided that with this first phase, we're only going to focus on the landscaping for the first phase and then leave that second phase for another time. That's also a condition of approval, but I'll go over that as well. So with this first phase, it's about 210,000 square feet. The landscaping is going to cover 25% of that 210,000 square feet. When the second phase is improved, when it's being resurfaced into the car park, they're figuring out the configuration of the parking stalls, that kind of thing. That's where this condition of approval comes into play, where we're asking them to, here, I'll pull it up. Yeah, before the second phase is improved or finished, the applicant must submit a landscaping plan that meets site and interior landscaping requirements and civil plans, which must receive final approval from city staff. So before this parking lot is put in, they must they'll have to, submit a grading plan to the engineers to make sure the parking grading is gonna work. And they'll also have to submit a landscaping plan to us so that we can make sure the landscaping will go in really well. As you can see on the site plan, it looks like the civil engineer has put in, I'm assuming this would be like the landscaping strip along the front and then this landscaping area on the side as like a buffer from this property over here. That may change when there's also those interior landscaping requirements, of course. So when we figure out the exact configuration of the parking stalls, we'll add in those interior lands. And I'm going on about this.
So that's the second phase, though.
Yeah, this is for the second phase, and it's not planned yet, but it will be. And it will at some point meet that, the entire lot will at some point meet that 25% requirement.
Can I make a quick comment about those two areas too? There's a pretty significant grade change from that parcel on the east of us downward. So that would probably be like a hillside landscape, so I don't see that changing. And the one along 400 South, part of it is already landscaped. So yeah, we would just maintain that and then do that grade change we have there along the east side. So it would all remain.
So having that, you're saying that only 19% of that will be put in on this first phase then, as far as the landscaping?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's different than the 21% that,
Is that
That's-
counting the
it
existing
changed.
sod that's there now?
Yes, they are. I believe you're counting the sod that's already there. Yeah,
To the sidewalk? Correct.
And
yeah.
so you just said that part's quite slopey up there.
Yeah,
And so what's the future use? I mean, to park cars on there, you're gonna have to do something, right? Is it too slopey to park cars or?
On that slope, yes. Yeah, it's probably gonna be a deal where it comes down to a retaining wall type
Right.
of deal and then drops straight down.
So,
Future use, I don't think we have a future use for this currently right
I mean,
now.
they're just talking about future use and maybe parking cars or something.
Yeah,
out
no,
there,
I
and
think it's gonna be landscape most of its life because it's significant. I wanna say it's like 30.
And I guess that answers my other question. That's not gonna be, because I've seen it in other car lots where that becomes the overflow, but it's probably not possible to become the overflow.
No, it's way too steep
with
for that.
Okay.
You mean the whole stand or just
Employees out there.
just the very?
The very east, 25 feet there, yeah.
Not the whole thing.
Mary, when I was visiting with you earlier today, you said that there was concern about trees and how many
Yes.
of those were going to be removed, and then also the evergreen requirement.
Yeah, I'll get into that right now.
Okay.
So that's, the percentage requirements on that lot with the different phases. Then, moving on to the landscaping strip, I'll come back to this landscaping plan. I just want to kind of explain the spacing that's required in the regional commercial, and I'll go into the trees. So in the regional commercial code, it requires that the landscaping strip, which is behind the sidewalk to the, beginning of the parking lot, it requires that it must be 16 to 20 feet wide, and the park strip, which is, the front of the sidewalk to the back of the curb, that space, that has to be between 8 to 12 feet wide. With the current configuration of the sidewalk, it's just not possible, especially up here where that sidewalk, comes all the way up to the curb and it just runs along the curb the rest of the way down. So this sidewalk and the park strips and the landscaping strips were installed in about 2013, 2014. This lot was rezoned to regional commercial just in the past few years. So the applicant, at the time of installation, it did meet requirements, I should say. So the applicant will not be realigning this sidewalk to meet regional commercial standards. However, there will still be about a 30-foot setback from here. There is still about a 30-foot setback from the public street to that, the beginning of the parking lot. And there are trees, but not the trees that are existing. So going into that, we were sent this right before we sent this out at like 1:30-ish, and the landscape architect showed save and protect, and removing the few trees that are in drive accesses. But since then, we've talked with the property owner, or I think Mike talked with you, Dave. Is that right? Yeah, and Dave told us, this is something we didn't, really take into account, is that when you have mature trees lining, a road, here, I'll just pull this Google Map picture over. When you have, and they're a little bit bigger than this was in 2018. When you have mature trees lining a road that's meant to specifically be for the display of cars, it's counterintuitive to that display of cars. So something that Murdoch Hyundai did is, as you can see, they have trees there for sure, but they're not lining that entire park strip. It's kind of this clustered tree, and I'll show you the aerial. See, you can see there's like 3 trees here, there's 2 trees here, whereas in this lot, they're, every 30 feet on center, which is what was required.
So is the plan to have the same number of trees, only to have those clustered instead?
Yeah, so I believe that the tree requirement would be altered so that they aren't every 30 feet. There's no net loss of landscaping, so there'll still be that amount, the required amount of trees on the lot, but they're clustered together, they're moved into different areas so that it's not completely covering that display of the cars.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the planning commission is able to.
I've always felt like that is wise. I don't know if you remember, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
God doesn't plant trees every 30 feet.
A little more natural.
Clustering makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
In Sandy City a few years ago, they adopted a specific ordinance for their auto mall to cluster the trees and not put them every 30 feet, because you're
You're blocking the view.
high sales tax producing businesses. You want them to be able to sell 200 cars a month, and so that's.
And visibility is a big part of their business.
I think it makes sense for a lot of commercial uses.
Yeah, I think, there's places like State Street where you want, your tree-lined street or a center street or something like that, but there's a chance to work with these guys on that.
Oh, I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a section in the regional commercial code that says that the planning commission has the authority to alter landscaping requirements concerning trees with regard to location and design when no net loss of landscaping occurs. So there is a condition, because we don't have that landscaping plan to show you where all of those trees are going to go. We don't have that right now. There is a condition that says the landscaping plan will receive final approval from city staff. And that's kind of this catch-all. We're going to make sure that there is no net loss of landscaping with this clustering of the trees.
I'm excited to have you here. I need your money.
Yeah.
That's the carrot.
Are you keeping your American Fork operation, or is it moving here? Or don't you have a,
We're moving, the Kia store, we're moving to Lindon.
oh, okay,
But
from,
our other buildings are staying in American Fork.
yeah, because what do you have, a
We
Subaru?
have Subaru and Chrysler Jeep Dodge
Yeah.
there. And we have 2 stores in Spanish Fork as well. But
So you utilize the Kia dealer for something else, expand one of the other ones, or
yeah, we're
playing with that?
we're still trying to find a replacement for that. But we took a Kia. I've been with Kia since 2009 when we bought it, and it was in Provo at that time. And I'm one of Doug's sons. And there's 5 of us, and Kia's been kind of my baby, so to speak. And I watched it grow quite a bit over the last 14 years, and to the point where we just needed more space, bigger building, a bigger lot, and so we're taking a little bit of a blind leap here with leaving a building empty. So it's much needed, and Lindon has been phenomenal so far. Pursuing this property wasn't easy. It was just sold to someone else when we started pursuing it. So I think without Mike Florence, I'm not sure we'd be here, because he helped a great deal with that. So it's been great so far. So I appreciate it.
They won't fall under the landscaping that we just previously discussed.
No, because we haven't approved it.
They could pull
They
out
may
a
want
lot
to
of that.
pull out all the grass.
We
They
would
could-
like to have 0 grass in our front yard.
Yeah, they could.
Other dealerships I have worked with before have been worried, they've had the overspray and that's stained the vehicles.
Mhm.
They've
They don't want
pulled
grass.
out a lot of the grass for the xeriscaping, so, as they continue to develop this landscape plan, we can work with them on that.
And at least they're not paying for the grass that they're gonna turn around and tear out, because the city put it in.
It's true.
The RDA put it in, so.
Yeah,
And when are you planning on breaking ground for this?
They're halfway done.
Yeah, no, we
You drive down there. Today, you're moving stuff around.
dirt
now.
around to get ready, but
Good.
we
Yeah, you can see that they're already doing that.
probably next month.
Yeah, this next month or so, we have
Right.
ready to start going up with it.
Yeah.
Nice.
well, that's great. I think
Okay.
it looks good. I think we've made some adjustments that are reasonable, that are, and thank you. And this is a big change from the first one you sent out.
Some way.
And Hyundai are our sister companies. I think Hyundai owns
Like
about
Chevrolet and GMC.
30% of Kia or something like that. Yeah.
So, have you got more?
I just have a tiny bit more. I'll just
Okay.
quickly go through the building requirements. I just wanted to also say there is a perimeter landscaping requirement in the regional commercial zone, 10 foot of landscaping around the building unless there's docking or loading. As you can see, there's overhead doors for docking or loading on all of these sides, except for this front side. So they put planters here. There's this, I think that's like 15 feet of landscaping right there and there. But then over here, they did a 20-foot landscaping strip. So we did the calculations, and there's no net loss of landscaping here. They've just kind of relocated that landscaping in a place that'll make a little bit more sense for them. And then the lot does meet minimum lot size, frontage, and building setback requirements, and the streetlights have already been put in by the RDA a few years ago, like I mentioned. All right, so building, I'll just do this really quick. The facade, one of the main requirement really is that the facade is broken up and with architectural details, building height, building depth, change in materials, that kind of thing, every 40 to 50 feet. And this building, as you can see, there's tons of architectural detailing. There's, of course, it's a mostly glass front facade for that display of cars. On the sides here, this was our main concern with the original elevations. It used to be just plain, but they've added these columns here to create that detailing. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, the main entrance is oriented towards the main street. The main entrance will have this, here, I'm just gonna pull up the actual elevations. This will be much better. There you go. It'll have this projecting element to kind of highlight that entrance. The roof line, it does, I'm gonna show you some photos. It's from the previous elevations, the previous landscaping plan, but they show the, above bird's eye view of the building. So I think it kind of shows the roof line a little better. If you can see, it kind of drops down here, drops down here. There's a few projecting elements as well on the sides. Again, this is the old landscaping plan as well, so. And there you can see it better here. For the new elevations, the service section will be elevated. See there, it says delivery now. So it's gonna come up to the actual height of the building, but it's still projecting out of that building, creating, architectural interest and depth to the building, which is what we really want. We don't want like a boxy building. We want something that is interesting, shows depth, shows interest in the architectural design. We think this building will be really good looking on our little corner in Lindon. So, this is going to be a great project. We've already talked about it. There are some issues with the landscaping, those parking things we talked about that staff is prepared to go through with the applicant to be able to go over that and to make sure we're confident that everything is being met. This new car dealership will be great for Lindon. The building will be beautiful, with plenty of beautiful landscaping around it.
So is the White Mountains the background part of their requirement to make sure that maintained during the month of August, September?
We'd like to, the next 10 years, it'd be nice to see that white mountain.
It's part of their their landscaping. Because from this angle, it looks like it's part of it.
Yeah.
You know?
They actually went down, took a photo of it, and so the actual background is what you see is what you get.
That's cool.
Any other questions?
What about lighting? We don't have any issues with residential, we're far enough away.
Let me show you this Google map. So here's the lot. I'll just do an approximate. I'm gonna say like right there's the property line, measure distance, and then here's that first residential home. So that is 1,157 feet away, and there's a existing building that's in between them as well. So, and then to the north, they're probably even farther away, and there's two, taller buildings in between them. And then no residential down here. So lighting will be great. They did turn in a photometric plan as well.
So the 6.88 acres goes this far east, is that what you're saying?
Let me pull up the actual county map.
This right here.
No, there's more vacant lot to the east of us too.
So you can see the actual property line.
Okay.
See, there that is. So it's by that big tree, so I might have been a little off on that measurement. From here over, so 985 feet, approximately.
So if you decide not to use that other 30%, is it 30% that you're leaving for phase two?
About 30%.
So that's like 2 acres. Could that be subdivided in the future and that be an option to sell that off if you didn't need it, or?
Well, according to the landscape plan, it has to be included to get to 25%. They have to do something with it at some point.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What if there's an opportunity to sell that, and then it leaves
6%.
short on land?
Yeah.
Usable. Is it on a grade?
Well,
Is that the one?
Just what is it,
Just like the last
Oh,
like the
okay.
east 25 feet,
20.
the rest of it's fairly level.
yeah.
We've talked about possibly a small little dealership there of another brand or something, and there's lots of options.
We don't plan on, we don't have any plans to sell it. We plan on using it for something. If it comes to just parking, we would. We'd rather use it for something that we could.
Everybody's doing employee pickleball courts.
There you
So
go.
you might want to
Pickleball
consider
courts.
that.
Pickleball.
Car wash for us Subaru owners should purchase from.
Hey, okay.
Well, and then you've got to have your landscaping on that to get your other 6% too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they've brought up, I had some concern about landscaping, and obviously we have to follow the code, but I think they've brought those up in a good way. I do have a little concern over more and more landscaping just because of one of the main reasons we're going to the space is because we've run out of space
Right.
at our current location. So taking up a fourth of the property with landscaping does give me a little heartburn because we're giving up some parking. But so the more parking we can have, the more vehicles we can store, both retail and service customers, which would give us more revenue. So,
Makes sense. But that is the
Yeah.
code.
yes,
For
I understand that,
landscaping.
yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as additional conditions, Mary, as far as that change in the landscaping, it already says that the landscaping plan will receive final approval from city staff. So can that include the clustering of the trees?
Yeah,
As
I
long
think,
as it
I think
is
that's
the
great.
Same number of trees?
No net
Okay.
loss in
And
landscaping.
then also, I think one of the other concerns was on the parking, the customer and employee parking, updated pole signs for that.
Yeah, so that's condition number 7 on this updated report. I'll zoom in a little more.
It's on there somewhere. Oh, yeah, a plan said customer parking upright pole signs, yeah, it's part, it's
So the
Why don't you
applicant,
leave
element
that
7.
up?
yeah, okay. Not quite all of them in there, but
Okay.
anyways.
So that's really the only, okay, because the second phase is improved and finished, the applicant must submit a landscaping plan that meets the site and interior landscaping requirements. That can't be, okay, so
That's the
that can't be put
25%.
into place of the landscaping plan, so that has to be additional.
Yeah, we wanted to make that additional because it's not just landscaping. Our engineers would want to see a grading plan as well.
Okay, all right. So are we, do you have additional questions for staff or for these representatives from Kia? Anyone?
Who else is there? There's somebody here, I see, let's see.
Yeah,
This is
we've
Jeff.
got,
This is Jeff Smith, he's our general contractor.
oh, okay,
Yeah, he's with,
all right.
I got
Okay.
caught in a rainstorm and traffic.
And I apologize
I'm
for being
sorry,
late,
we
same
didn't
storm.
recognize you also.
Then you
You're
had to
welcome
endure our
come up here in
hour-long-
front also if you'd like
Oh,
to.
this is perfect for me.
So are you another, one of the sons, or are you the,
Yeah, I'm one of the, not one of these sons, but I'm Doug's brother.
Doug's brother? Okay, so your family,
yeah,
okay.
Your
all right.
uncle.
my uncle,
Got it.
my
Yeah.
favorite uncle.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I helped him on your Eagle Scout project.
Well, thank you for, all of you for being here. I think we're ready for a motion then, if there's no additional comments or questions.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, and then just be sure to include those
Yeah, I have it
two.
here in front of me,
Okay.
7 and 8.
Okay,
7, 8, and 9, yes.
okay.
I think you could even just say as presented, could be.
Yeah, where it's part of the record, you can say just as presented.
Okay. I move to approve the applicant's request for site plan approval with the following conditions, cite 1 through 9 on the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the voting is unanimous. And we're excited to have you
Yeah,
coming to
we're excited to be
Lindon.
here too.
Yeah.
Send
Thank
lots of
you.
cars.
And
We'll
I
try.
did notice you were already moving dirt down there. That's
Yeah, yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
That's how anxious we are, we're excited.
That's how I went driving around down there, and that's how I could tell it was exactly where it was.
Yeah, we're underway, thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
No, I drove up here, I didn't know this was here, this end. I've always been on the other end of the building.
Yeah, we saw you walk by.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, at least I met her.
Well, thank you for being here also. Okay. All right.
You have 5 minutes.
I know.
and I can, and there's no games. This is too close.
Oh,
I've
yeah, we
used all of my.
did the game last
But,
time.
but I did, you know,
changes or
information, we're gonna go through these really fast. You've all seen them at least, what is it? We're on 13, 14 times now. But, information is the policy. And down at the bottom, public participation is vital. We're going to find out why public participation is vital.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay, my volume. Sorry. Can you hear it?
I apologize for
Thank you so
not
much for coming.
looking
What
at that
amazing
agenda
turnout.
order more carefully.
My name is Leslie Knope. I am the Deputy Director of the Parks and Recreation Department. And tonight we're going to be taking some of your questions. Hello? We're having a meeting in here.
Does anybody have any questions about permits?
We don't need palaces. The ideas are what shine in our meetings.
What are you, some kind of moron? Why don't you have hand dryers in the park bathrooms? They're so much more sanitary than paper towels. Anyone knows that.
My dog went to one of your parks and ate another dog's feces, and I'm going to sue you for that.
How do you like it? Huh?
No!
How do you like that? Now imagine you're holding coffee.
With the government shut down, who's gonna stop Al-Qaeda?
One thing at a time. I don't like obscenities just as much as you don't like
No,
them.
it drives me crazy. I have kids.
Right. But
I've got my little 3-year-old. I'm going through the park, and someone's like, "Hey, Mike." The guy's, "You Mike." Head.
these people are members of a community that care about where they live. So what I hear when I'm being yelled at is people caring loudly at me.
Caring loudly.
Nutrihum's energy bars are just absolutely loaded with high fructose corn syrup and fatty oils. And any way you slice it, they're just extremely unhealthy for you.
Leslie needs to butt out. The whole point of this country is if you want to eat garbage, balloon up to 600 pounds, and die of a heart attack at 43, you can. You are free to do so. To me, that's beautiful.
Ron Swanson.
If sugar is so bad, how come Jesus made it taste so good?
Yes, but isn't awful. I've been eating lasagna and muffins every day of my life for 40 years, and I feel terrible.
Right.
What's so bad about corn syrup? It's natural. Corn's a fruit. Syrup comes from a bush.
Oh, boy.
How do we know you're really a nurse?
I am. I promise. I work at St. Joe's.
Well, the point is, my friend thinks you're cute. Give me your number so he can have it.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Can I have your email address?
Oh
I
my
just got
God.
on AOL.
No,
I think we ought to throw those bars out and eat ham and mayonnaise sandwiches.
that's not a good idea.
Ham and mayonnaise.
No.
Ham and mayonnaise.
No, no, no.
Ham and mayonnaise. Ham and...
So that's what today's forum is for. We're going to hear suggestions from everyone, and then whichever items we generally agree on will go into the time capsule. Please remember, this is a government project, so we need to refrain from corporate promotion and religious items. Who'd like to start?
I think we should put in the Bible.
Great. Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, if we put a tax on soda, I mean, what's next? Income?
Sir, you don't pay your income tax?
Whether or not I pay income tax is none of the government's business.
No, well, actually it is.
Well, you don't know my name or what I look like, so good luck finding me.
Anyone else? Anyone? This gentleman wants to say something.
No, I don't.
Come on, Mel. You're always up in arms about something.
No, I'm not. I'm not always up in arms about something.
Here we go. That's the spirit. Talk to me about what's bothering you.
Okay, are there any more recommendations for new games at the rec center?
My daughter, she loves Chutes and Ladders.
Oh, come on. There is no strategy to chutes and ladders. It's just luck.
My daughter's 5.
Well, your daughter is an idiot. Her daughter is an idiot. Her daughter is an idiot. Her daughter is an idiot.
It's the only part down there.
Okay, it goes on for a long time, but it gets a little.
Yeah, public participation is better.
I don't know what I did there. Oh, I have to drop this volume back down, or we get those echoes. Okay, anyway. We can relate to that. I thought it was kind of a fun way to kick things off. But now we'll buzz through these, the actual training. Again, definition of a public body. You guys are a public body. It's a body that is administrative, advisory, executive, or legislative.
It has to have at least 2 people, like we learned last time, expend, disperse, or is supported by tax revenue. So clearly the commission is a public body, and you are vested with authority to make decisions regarding the public's business. It does not include a political party, legislative committees, they exclude themselves, and certain school community councils. A meeting, definition of meetings, when we are basically a quorum, and we're present and we are dealing with the public's business. Even whether it's just an advisory role, if we're dealing with the public's business, that's a public meeting. Does not include, like we talked about last time, chance meetings, social meetings, or if we're convening something to talk solely about how we're going to administer something administratively and we're not going to take any action. Honestly, I don't think that we do that very often, especially the commission. The council has some different hats that they wear, but doesn't really apply to us. So we'll skip past that. And again, a quorum is just a simple majority of the public body. Quorum does not include if you're just, in this one I said 2 elected officials, that's when you have a 5 members, but as long as it's lower than the majority, you can go ahead and meet, you know, so here we could have 3, are we 7 or 9? We're 7. So we could do 3 and we'd be just fine. And we're all here tonight, aren't we? So.
Mike Marchbank.
So
Mike.
I don't, so Brian, on that, help remind me.
Uh-huh.
So let's say when Renee leaves, when she's moving, and it takes a little while to appoint someone sometimes.
Right.
Is a quorum of the potential 7, or is it a quorum of the 6?
It's a quorum of the 7 still. That's okay. The body. So we will still have to have 4 to make a quorum.
Okay.
Yep. Talking about just the different things that still constitute public meetings, workshops, executive sessions. And again, workshops are public meetings. They have to be held in certain locations, and we have to give notice of where those workshops are going to take place, unless, of course, there's an emergency. Public notice must be given at least 24 hours in advance and include the agenda, the date, the time, and place. And then Kathy, once a year, has to publish what our planned meetings are. We can make adjustments to that as we need. But again, that has to be by official action and motion if we're going to change our calendar. But agendas, the most important thing here is we cannot take any action on an item that is not on the agenda. We can take public comment, we can discuss it, but we cannot take an item that is action on an item that is not on the agenda. Again, they have to be specific enough so that people knows what people know what we're talking about. Sometimes, you know, you've seen some cities that maybe try to hide the ball a little bit. Luckily, we've never had an issue of that at all in Lindon. And again, topics not on the agenda. Again, I've gone over that already, so we'll just flip through that. Oh, let me go back. There's one thing that I didn't say. Just notice there on A, it has to be a topic that's raised by the public. We can't just say, hey, let's all talk about this now and then put it on the agenda next time and just vote on it. If we're going to discuss an item that's not on the agenda, it has to be raised by the public, not, you know, we can say, hey, staff, we would like to address this next time. That's great, but we can't have detailed discussions about a subject, okay? Minutes, Kathy does a really great job on those minutes, taking care of the information that needs to be there. She's also really good about making sure that we get them posted on time. And we just need to remember, even when minutes are awaiting approval, they are the official record, and well, I take that back. They're not the official record until they're approved, but they are available to the public as while they're waiting to be approved. So just remember that. Minutes, you can actually go in and edit. You know, if you're going through the minutes and you actually said something, but you said it backwards from what you meant to say, and so even if the recording is kept, you can go into the minutes when we're approving those minutes, you can come in and say, hey, I recognized I said Bill was there, I didn't mean Bill, I meant John. You know, you can correct those, and that will be the official record of the meeting, okay? So, just understand you have that ability as well. And minutes have to be made available to the public within 3 days of being approved. Recordings, again, they have to be unedited and complete. This excludes closed meetings, but we don't do closed meetings here, so we're gonna skip through that stuff really quick. Again, made available to the public within 3 days. And no recordings are required for site visits if no official action is taken there. Again, if we have some member of the public come in here and set up a camera and start recording, that is perfectly fine as long as they're not interrupting and distracting. Every citizen has a right to record our meetings and to participate in those. Closed, we're just gonna skip through the closed meeting stuff because we don't do that here. But it will be on Jeopardy, so read this really quick as we go through. I think we're about there, we're getting close. Just the fun part of what are the penalties if we mess this up. Okay, electronic meetings, we do that a lot. Again, the anchor locations are required. Legislature this year, the one thing that just changed, the legislature is going to allow us to hold electronic meetings on a regular basis, not a regular basis. They're going to let us hold them for 30 days straight if the chair declares an emergency. You know, if there's something that's keeping us from meeting, but we can only do it for 30 days. So this is in response to the pandemic. A lot of places went to to remote meetings during the pandemic. Now the legislature said, okay, you can do that, but only for 30 days, unless the city council goes through and declares some major public emergency, and then there's a whole nother process for that. But the chairperson, Sharon, you can say, hey, we've all got the flu. We're gonna hold a meeting this way. You have the right to declare or to require us to hold electronic meetings. Have to state the reason, and there's some things, if you ever want to do that.
If we had, say, less than the quorum that could be here, but several were joining us
Yeah.
remotely.
Right, and we can do electronic meetings, whenever we need to, for those types of things. If we know that 3 of us are gonna be out of town, we can do an electronic meeting so that we can get a quorum together on a one-time, but on a consistent, each week for the next month, we're going to, I guess that's only 2 meetings for us, isn't it?
Is that what it means? 30-day period?
Yeah, it's a 30-day period.
2 meetings, not 30 meetings.
Right, 30-day period, exactly. So, again, I always say this, and you guys are awesome about it, but the law states that nothing in this chapter prohibits us from using electronic messaging to other members of the body when we're not in a meeting. It doesn't expressly say you can't do it while you're in a meeting, but I would encourage us to read it that way. Don't text each other back and forth during meetings, because the perception is you're trying to hide something from the public. And as we all know, perception 90% of the time is reality. It's what people base their decisions on, is that perception. So, and always remember that texts and that you send, if they're dealing with public business, are subject to grandma, and it does have to be disclosed if someone asks for your text messages. So if they see you up here texting during a meeting, that just invites them to say, hey, what are you texting about? I want to see. Now, all you have to do is declare, I wasn't texting about public, matters. It was a private matter I was texting about. But let's just avoid all of those circumstances. So,
with my previous employer, I had a city council member file a grandma request for all the mayor's text messages during council meeting, because she was just standing there texting the whole time.
Really?
yes. And then finally, the consequences of failing to comply with this act are just pretty simply, the court can set aside any action that we do that has been in violation of this act, and we would be responsible for the attorney's fees, which get up there through litigation if someone were to sue us for violating this act. But they have to be brought within 90 days. And then finally, if someone intentionally violates the act, you knowingly are trying to hide information and do it around the Open Meetings Act, that is punishable as a Class B misdemeanor, which is up to 90 days in jail and up to $1,800 fine. But I have never seen that ever prosecuted, so. Okay, thank you, and we are done for another year.
Well, thank you very much.
And no one in those videos was intended to represent anybody on the commission or any member of our public that attends. I want you to know that. So, except for maybe Ron Swanson. I think maybe no.
I'm glad our public are kinder than that. Thank you very much, Brian. Okay, as far as commissioners, is there anything any of you would like to bring up this
Well, I
evening?
just have one question, Brian. I heard there was some legislation, I don't know if it passed or not, about if a citizen sues the city, they can now claim reasonable attorney's fees.
Did not pass.
It did not pass,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, that was one that was being pushed by a certain group of legislators, but the city, the League of Cities and Towns really got people to rally around it, and they got that one stopped. That would have been a bad one.
I can see both sides of that,
Certainly.
because sometimes the city could be wrong, but the citizen doesn't take it any further because it can get so expensive.
Right.
And there's no
I mean, there is
recompense there, but.
a common law principle of what called the public attorney fee. But you do have to prevail on it, you know, you have to win, or else, you know, it doesn't apply. But there is a common law, it's out there, there is a way, if a citizen is going out and validating, you know, public rights, they're gonna get compensated for their attorney's fees. But they do have to prevail. I could go on for a long time about that one.
I didn't hear the resolution on that particular legislation proposal.
No, that's interesting, yeah. Anyone else, anything will happen?
Well, I just heard a little piece of, she's moving, what's that all about?
yeah.
I didn't know that.
You were gone that meeting.
It's officially on the market.
Okay.
I'll send you a link if you want to see it.
Okay.
Beautiful home, find me a good family. Yeah, we're moving down to Benjamin. It's like 22 miles south of here, west side of Spanish Fork.
Oh, okay.
Gorgeous.
5.5 acres. We have our horses down there and
Oh, good for you.
12 baby chicks and a dog and all that stuff. Anyway,
Yeah,
big
and
change.
then
We've been here 25 years. but-
you're planning to be here until next meeting,
Yeah,
is that?
yeah. Probably
Okay.
April 1.
Okay, all right.
And I feel like I can't step away after this water topic here.
Hey Sharon, could I just make a comment? Sharon?
Uh-huh.
Could I just?
Sure.
I wonder if there's a possibility sometime this year that we could look at our ordinances regarding things that pertain to beautification. I just think that we're missing out by not, you know, you don't like to strong arm everybody, but there ought to be some standards.
I
that-
agree.
That we can require homeowners to make their property look nice. I mean, we've got a temple being built right here in our city, and, you know, some of our streets are just absurdly ugly. And,
Do you mean the
yes.
residential homes along those streets?
Well,
Or do
and
you mean the
commercial.
streets that belong to the city?
The city as a whole.
I'm not talking so much about the street, although there might be some of that, but I'm talking about the property owned by the people. I mean, if you drive from State Street up 4th North, it's pretty shabby.
There's a few.
There's a few.
There's a really bad one right before.
Well, there's a few that aren't shabby, okay?
Yeah.
But
Well, what
there-
you're saying, there ought to be a minimum standard for
be some minimum
residential
standards,
landscaping.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And maybe if you've got 14 cars in your backyard, there ought to be some fencing requirement or something, screening requirement. I just think we are missing the boat. I know a lot of cities have that.
This is so hard because of property rights,
Oh, it is.
property
Well,
rights.
you
Yeah, it
know,
is,
many
because-
cities do have that in
Yeah.
place, though. And that was one of my first, when I first came on the planning commission, that was one of my very first things, is that I felt like that, because of coming from another city, you know, that there ought to be some basic residential requirements.
Yeah, I've seen some from the larger cities where they say you can't park your car in your grass, or you can't, do that kind of stuff, because they want it to be clean, but,
I think
but landscape maintenance is a tough sell for some
We do
people.
have a
It
provision
is.
that says you can't park unregistered vehicles. They have to be screened, but if it's a licensed, registered vehicle, we don't have any provisions on that.
And that's what I'm saying, is I think we ought to look at it and maybe come up with some.
So the junkers, yeah, we can deal with that, but if you've got 12 kids and
Every kid has a car.
every kid has a car and, yeah, you're gonna.
that would probably be a good discussion for a future joint meeting with the city council to see what direction they might have on
Yeah, and
that.
it's really difficult here in Utah, where rural, there's like zero. You could have 60 years or 100 years of old beat-up farm tractors laying on your property and
But you
14
know what?
barns that are falling down and no one says a thing.
You know what, you go to Bluffdale, they're an older, just as old a community as Lindon. And they have standards, and they've got really nice looking communities, and,
A lot of the
Yeah.
communities
I
do
mean,
have a basic standard.
you know, they have
Yeah.
a basic standard.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I think you could make that fly if there wasn't a penalty associated, if you just establish a mechanism so that the homeowner is notified, and I don't know, I mean, they're gonna, there's no rub there, I mean, but if you have something there, hey, this happens, this is the fine, then you're gonna see this room fill with people, residents screaming and yelling, but,
I don't really think so. I
a
think
lot-
more of the residents would feel the way I've just said than don't.
yeah.
They would
Oh, I agree.
appreciate.
Oh, I
they would
agree. I think
appreciate
a
that.
vast majority of the public would want it, but then there'd be the whole anti-government, anti-intrusion group that would be here screaming and yelling, saying, you can't tell me how
But
to
I think that's
maintain
the
my yard.
reason why a lot of people like to live in a community where there is an HOA, is
True.
so that there is a standard people need to maintain.
It's true.
I don't think we need to go overboard, but I mean, I think having a minimum time for your front yard to be put in is not unreasonable. And I don't know,
It comes down to economics. Not everybody can afford to do that.
that's not true.
But most
It is.
people can
No,
take care of
they
their
can-
yard.
They can take
I-
care of it, they can park it where it's not visible to other people, that doesn't cost anything.
You don't know what kind of hardships or what kind of people
think
have
I do.
had, you know? I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I can define how
So you're
people-
saying like Mayor down there,
Yeah,
he's in a hardship, so he doesn't have to clean up his yard,
You're talking about 400
the
north?
one that you always jump on.
The 400 north?
Yeah. It's like one man's trash is another man's treasure.
I
Yeah.
guess.
It's like,
Well, but the ones that have been egregious, there must be something else going on there that they can't
I don't
get it
agree.
together.
A lot of times they just don't care. I've
Well,
lived
that
in
Well-
comes
those
down to
situations.
self-respect, and
If
I
I
don't
can
know how you manage
bring
that.
up an example, we just had the guy that owns the fence company on Fourth North come in. I think we gave him way too much time to get that accomplished, and if you look at it, it looks like a junkyard. And he's in violation right now, he's got stuff stacked way above the
yeah, I noticed
fences.
it's way higher, it's stacked, right now I notice it's stacked to the moon.
And I mean, we've had to take him to court, we've had multiple violations year after year to get him to clean up. He's gonna come back to the next meeting to talk about the fencing along 400 North. And so, we
I
didn't,
shouldn't give him any leniency.
we didn't address the fencing along 400 North. And so,
We did.
No, because there's a little gray area. He has an idea of what he wants to put up, but I think.
he wants to put up chain link with slats. I've told him, no, that needs to be a requirement, only the commission needs to review that.
Well, I'm just not
So-
picking on him, but I'm just saying, those are the kind of things
Yeah, I
that
mean,
just drag on.
he's
and
been a
on.
decade-long, you know, eyesore, and, you know, there's others, I know we've talked about those. So.
Yeah, we've got,
Just a reminder, we do have a code enforcement officer, he works part-time. If you see something, you know, you're welcome to send that to Mary and I, and
Has he
we'll.
been to some of those concerning areas that we've talked about before, and what kind
Yeah,
of
like,
response?
like, for example, the couch that was in the front yard
Yeah.
on 400 North.
Yeah,
I mean, they put it to the side yard.
for the side yard,
and-
now they've got a refrigerator back there.
And so,
You know,
well, that's probably because they couldn't fit it in their front door, their couch, am I right? Is that what happened? It's your neighbor.
so,
I agree that most people take nice care of things just out of a sense of pride and probably respect for their neighbors and neighborhood, but there's always those few that just really don't care.
yeah, I mean, our department's tackled some big cases, and some that we're still working on, and, you know, there's some that are so full of junk, and we're working on timelines with them, and so.
Okay. Well, anything else? on
that's
that?
it. Oh, the other thing, is there any more that you know about closing Lindon Elementary School?
Just what the school board decided on, so.
Yeah, I think the biggest rub on that I talked to the mayor in quite detail about it. And I think sort of the biggest rub is like, the city of Lindon, we pay the most in the district for per pupil because of our property taxes. Our homes are worth more, and we don't have a relatively high number of students. And so we pay like $100 and something per student of our property tax, where the other cities are paying like 60. And so here we're paying the most towards it, but yet we're the schools that are being cut. And so that's a real rub. But, yeah, she's not pleased, so.
What is your take on that, Steve? Because I know you've had a lot of your family that have gone to Lindon Elementary, haven't you?
Well, from my grandparents to my kids, yeah. That's been a few
Yeah.
generations at Lindon Elementary. My opinion is Lindon Elementary needs a lot of help. It needed help when I was there. But I don't, you know, it's.
Structurally, you mean?
Structurally.
Yeah.
It's not I don't think I'd want my grandkids to attend there. I wouldn't want them in there if there was an earthquake, you know? So from that point of view, but then on the other hand, I don't know what the best answer,
But
you know, but sending them to Central Elementary, I don't know if you know.
Or you want 850 of them
Up
up at.
Well, aren't they gonna split it to Rocky Mountain as well?
Some to Rocky Mountain and some to Central is what I've heard, and.
So I'm sorry, what would they do with the land? Would they knock it down and?
meeting so that we're not discussing items that aren't on the agenda.
Okay.
Point.
Yeah.
We just learned that.
We just looked at that. I was just gonna.
Note one
Let's-
thing,
Let's just have
Why-
a motion to,
do you want to adjourn, or?
And
yeah.
Can I
and then
just
we
bring
can
up
go.
one thing
Yeah.
that Sharon and I talked about today? The Jeff Southard, Mary and I went and did a certificate of occupancy for one of his townhomes this week. I was impressed. I didn't know if you guys would like me to set up a tour, if you'd like to look at one
I
of the
would.
units.
Of course. Does he have some models, or that,
Doesn't have a model, they're actively for sale, like
Okay.
the one-car garage unit already sold, someone's moved in, but the two-car garage, I believe, is still open. One of the units will be a Prada Homes unit in, was it May or June? And so,
I think it'd be really interesting to see
okay,
what his units look like.
probably an evening time, does that work for you guys usually?
I just wish the grading, we discussed about maybe
Yeah.
changing the wording on the grading and the fencing. You can't have 7
Yeah.
feet of fencing and then raise the elevation 7 feet as well.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
okay, let's close the meeting.
Okay, do I have a motion? Well, let's ask Mike if he has anything else that he needed to bring up. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
And do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and do you want to go ahead with the microphone? Okay, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna, purely personal here and self-serving, I guess, but I just wanted to let you know that Lindon lost a great resident to